Coming to you live from my parents' house, we have episode 24 here of the Changavi Show. Those of you that are new, welcome in. I am your host, the man, the myth, the legend, Anuj, coming to you live from the parents' house. Hope y'all are doing well, having a good week so far. I know we're at the weekend, or one day till the weekend because this is coming out on Friday. So hope y'all are doing great. We got a packed show here today. A lot of stuff be happening in the world, pop culture, news, sports. You know the vibes. Super Bowl Sunday just wrapped. None of my Joe Burrow bets went through. Lost some money there, but it's cool. It's cool. You know, sometimes you make money sports betting, sometimes you lose money. But let's get right into how I'm doing, because I mean that's what we're doing anyway on this part of the show. How's Anuj doing, right? How fucking egotistical. I'm doing pretty good. I say that all the time, but I got a new camera. I'm trying out a new web camera because I've been getting a lot of complaints on the other one that I bought. So I bought one like 4 or 5 months ago from this company called Nexigo, and the quality wasn't really appearing how I would have liked, and it was kind of cutting in and out, and the TikToks were kind of looking like clap, and it was pretty shit. Like, it was pretty bad overall. So I decided, you know what? I need better quality equipment. And so, I worked a little bit. I also had my tax return just jump into the account suddenly, and things are looking up financially. So I was like, ooh, let me cop. So I bought myself this top of the line web camera. So let's see if it really is top of the line when this comes out. And if the quality is looking a little crisper, then yeah. Also, though, to be fair, I also bought new lighting, but the new lighting has not come yet, so you will maybe see that on the after show, which should be an exciting little surprise. So I sprung a little bit, bought some equipment. We're upping the technical revamp here at the Changavi Show. Pretty soon, we're going to get a Rogan mic, the mics that they use on Rogan. I know my sound is crisp, and it's probably the last thing I have to worry about, but I want a Joe Rogan mic because, flex, and also just sounds hella hot. But that's like a couple steps up. We have to slowly progress to that level. You can't get to Rogan before, you have to get to a mid-level podcaster before you get to the Rogan level microphones. But it's okay. We'll get to the studio setup one day. It's going to happen, I believe. But anyway, other than that, kind of had a down weekend last weekend, as I kind of referred to on the after show, talking about some of the stuff that's been going down with views and whatnot. So that's been rough. But, we're here, we're living, we're healthy. The podcast is still going, and the news doesn't stop. The news isn't like, oh, the Changavi Show had a tough week. Nah, they're like, you know what? There is much to talk about. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here. And let me transition to this because, listen, Super Bowl Sunday just happened. We just talked about on the last episode about betting and about rookie betting warnings. And hopefully y'all made some more money than I did because I made absolutely no money. I lost like $50. So hopefully y'all made some money going off of my very basic betting advice. But let's get into this because sports betting in California is going to be something that's going to be talked about here for the next 10 months until the election. So as you guys know, in November of 2022, we have the midterm elections here around the country. So not just in California, but all 50 states are going to be voting for new representatives in the House, and not only new representatives, but new senators as well. For some people in California, we're voting for the governor, and, other elected offices here in the state. All the state assembly seats are also up. So a lot of stuff. And of course, with midterm elections comes propositions as well, particularly these big propositions. And there's actually quite a few propositions that are going to be on the California ballot that are very big and very important. And frankly, one of the propositions that I believe is going to be really important is the one we're going to talk about right here, sports betting in California. So listen, a lot of states, actually 30 states around the country, have legalized sports betting. And this is a market, as you guys know, with, the rise of companies like FanDuel and Barstool and all of these companies. Sports betting is absolutely exploding throughout the United States. It is exploding. And listen, football season ended, but that doesn't stop the betting world from continuing on. The NBA is still going. The MLB is going to start up here in a few months. Sports doesn't stop in this country, and that means sports betting will not stop. And I believe, and honestly, though, the rise of online sports betting and daily fantasy and all of these things is really creating this new market share for business. And so the main companies that are involved within sports betting, at least across the nation where it's legalized, are companies like FanDuel, DraftKings. These are companies you probably have heard. DraftKings was traded on the New York Times, or not the New York Times, the New York Stock Exchange, and a company called Barstool Sports, which has recently got in with their own sports book. So yeah, that's happening. And listen, the sports betting economy is absolutely blowing up. But the thing is, where do a lot of people in America live? California and New York, right? Those were two. California, New York, and Texas are probably the three most populous states in the country. Two of the three have legalized. The one that hasn't legalized sports betting yet is California, the state that I live in. And California has a huge market share because there's a lot of consumers. There's like 9 major sports teams here. And so when you get California, and if the big sports betting companies can get California, based on legislation and a lot of stuff has to happen, then you're looking at a huge increase in the business. But look, not going to be that easy for any of these big companies, because let me explain it real quick. The way California works with betting and gambling is that a lot of it comes down to legal casino operators. So California's gambling system runs through the Native American reservation system. And so a lot of the way that Native Americans and the reservations get their income is through casinos. And that's why you hear, like, in California, like, oh, if you want to go gamble, go to an Indian reservation, because that's where a lot of the gambling does take place. So these legal casino operators and card rooms and sort of traditional in-person casinos on these Indian reservations are forced to basically duke it out with these big companies like FanDuel that are pouring in mass amounts of money to get their initiatives on the ballot in order to, with sports betting and all of the stuff that's going to go on. But I mean, like I said, if California sports betting does go through, you're adding like close to $3 billion of betting. Like, it's crazy. $3 billion. That's a lot of money. And it's going to come down to the little guy, which is the Native Americans, versus big sporting book companies like Caesars Sportsbook, FanDuel Sportsbook, Barstool, all of these different companies. And it's going to be a big war. So it's going to be a big fight. So let's talk about kind of what's going on with this fight. So right now in California, there are 3 potential proposals that are going to be on the ballot come November. Okay. So 3 potential proposals that are going to probably happen. So let me go through all 3, and then I'll tell you what I think of all of these various 3. Okay. So the first proposal, and they all have really long legal names. So apologies for, me going into this fucking jargon that's all over the place. So the first proposal is called the California Sports Wagering Regulation and Unlawful Gambling Enforcement Act. AKA, this act is basically being proposed by the Native Americans and the legal casino operators here in California. What they're saying is, and it's backed up by a bunch of Native American tribes and, that coalitions and whatnot. And basically what it says is that the only basically what they want, and what it says is that the only sports betting that you can do is in person at casinos and at the 4 horse racing tracks in California. So there's 4 horse racing tracks. You can legally bet there, and you can legally sports bet in a casino as well. So basically all the online sports books, FanDuel, Barstool, are obviously fuck no. I don't want this. All the big companies are against it and all of that. But here's the issue. Like I said earlier, gambling in the state of California has traditionally been not dominated by Native Americans, and it is one of the only ways that they get money into their reservations. And so if you take this completely away, which is, typically what the big companies want to do, you're losing a lot of jobs. Native Americans could get screwed over once again in history, and it could be a lot more harmful than it appears on the surface. Okay, then you have the second proposal, which is called the California Solutions to Homeless and Mental Health Support Act. This is the act that has been supported by a lot of the big sportsbook companies, the Barstools, the FanDuels of the world, all of that, as well as several mayors around California. So basically what this act is going to allow is it's going to allow online sports books to infiltrate California in the sports betting market. But with the pledge, there has to be a pledge that 10% of the money has to go to ending homelessness and helping with mental health resources. So this sounds great on the surface. Sounds fucking fantastic. But this is the state government we're talking about. Gavin Newsom, when he ran back in 2018, preached the same exact thing, that he was going to do everything in his power to end homelessness and really work hard to combat against the problems. But here we are in 2022, and that has not been the case. Homelessness has gone up in California. We've seen a lot of various things happen that Gavin Newsom said he was going to try and prevent. Okay, I'm just keeping those disclaimers in place. That is a fact. Gavin Newsom, the homelessness has decreased here in California, increased in California, whether you like that or not. Also, partially due to the COVID pandemic, not all because of Gavin Newsom. I'm just going to put that out there. But I feel like I have seen propositions as well during Newsom's tenure that have been put into place with aiding mental health and homelessness, but I've yet to see this actual action and actual data backing up that these propositions and these grants and all of these things that are going into that have passed in, from the public have gone into action. I haven't seen a lot of that happen. So it's kind of weird, to be honest. In addition, I feel like like the people that support this second proposal are the big brands, the FanDuels of the world, the DraftKings, the Barstools. So really the bigger companies that are trying to come in and get that California lion's share. Obviously, the Native Americans do not support this act because that would mean all betting is online at that point, or all betting is pretty much online and wouldn't necessarily be, in the casinos, lose a lot of people, a lot of jobs, stuff like that. This proposal, however, the first proposal we talked about is officially going to be on the ballot in 2022. The second proposal is not officially on the ballot. It does not have enough signatures, but it's been hitting a lot of the early landmarks that it needs to be hitting to get to where it needs to be in terms of its in terms of it being on the actual ballot in November. It's been getting the signatures it needs. It's hit early landmarks. And basically, it's got to be signed by, I believe it is June 30th of this year. It's got to have, I believe, 1 million signatures for it to officially be on the ballot. And it's looking like it's probably going to be on the ballot. And then the third proposal, which most likely will not be on the ballot, but is worth talking about because it's actually, in my opinion, the best proposal, is the age-verified tribal online and in-person sports wagering act. So basically, this act allows for both online sports books and tribes to operate gambling. So it wouldn't necessarily cost jobs, even though, when you do bring in the online presence, it would cost a significant number of jobs, no matter what, in regards to traditional casino rooms and all of that. But this proposal has no support. The big companies don't want to, spend their time compromising with the Native Americans, and the Native American tribal groups don't want the big companies and don't want to compromise with the big companies. So basically, it's got hardly any signatures. There's not really any credible individuals that are backing this bill, even though there is a particular coalition of Native Americans that are supporting this bill and trying to compromise. But the bill itself has really no legs yet, and probably will not make the ballot in November. But I also took a chance and took a shot at reading the bill. I skimmed all three, but this is the one I really tried to read in depth. The language is super broad. I feel like there isn't really any concrete details as to how this is going to go into place. But so I could see why there is limited support, because I feel like the proposition is quite poorly written. At the end of the day. So there are three proposals. These are the three that you probably need to know, because these are the three that have the biggest chance of making it to the ballot. Proposal 1 is already guaranteed to be on the ballot. Proposal 2 will most likely be there as well. And maybe proposal 3 will make an appearance. So what are we supposed to take from these three proposals, right? Fair question. Okay. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to this. Who wins? Big business or Native Americans, right? It's the little guy versus the big guy. And I don't mean to portray it in this light where I'm saying that Native Americans are the little guy in this case, right? And putting Native Americans behind anything automatically freaks out half the population. But as someone who's a sports bettor, because I feel like I have a pretty nuanced perspective on this, because I do understand the other side, but I understand the big business as well. As someone who's a sports bettor, I really like how easy FanDuel is to use, and it gets people who probably wouldn't bet sports to get involved and participate in it, which I think is cool. But at the same time, I do understand that the Native people's professions are kind of being thrown to the side, and we're not really recognizing the fact that we're probably taking jobs from them. But also, like, no one, like, right now in the state of California, you could place bets in Indian casinos. But the fact is, there's not very many Indian casinos in most areas. Like, even if you live in LA or San Francisco, like, you have to travel hours outside of your major metropolitan city to go place bets, which, let's be real, not very many people are going to do. So I think it's not the most realistic proposal to put into place, even though a lot of jobs are going to be lost. That being said, like, I do believe that proposal 2 is a good sort of proposal. I think the one that supports big business, and I think this because well, I think the money is going to 10% of the money is going to go to homelessness and mental health, and I like to give the state government the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully it does actually go into enact some change. And I would just like to see how those resources will be allocated and how the programs are exactly laid out. But small business is going to get laid out, you know, with the traditional gambling rooms and all of this, if FanDuel and Barstool went out here with proposal 2. And that's kind of the sad part of it all, is that there is going to be some jobs lost. And I would like to see maybe proposal 2 incorporate an element of like putting sort of what do you call it? Like putting some money aside for the Native Americans and like putting it back, reinvesting it back into the reservations in which it's like taking the money from. I think that could be more beneficial. But you know, we'll see how it all shakes out at the end. But really what this battle is going to come down to here is money. It's going to come down to money, and it's going to come down to who has more resources, who is willing to fight this fight harder. Are the big companies willing to, do the big companies want California that bad? Which the answer is yes, because the market is huge. And how can the Native Americans find a way to come to maybe an agreement with the big companies to come to a proposal that maybe works out for the both of them? We'll see. It's a really interesting proposal. It's a really interesting battle that's going on between these two sort of groups that are duking it out for the rights to sports betting in this state. Right now, I believe sports betting is mostly illegal. You have to do it through bookies and whatnot. But we will see come 2022, voters are going to have the option to make FanDuel and Barstool legal in this state, which it could be huge. And that could be very, very interesting, very, very quickly. But that was my breakdown of what's going down with sports. And honestly, a lot of you guys are probably bored because I talked a lot about sports betting, and that's probably a subject you all are not very interested in. So I decided to change it up a little bit. And let's talk some pop culture, because we got some pop culture topics got to get through as well. The Tinder Swindler. Have you guys heard of this? The Tinder Swindler. It's been going pretty viral here on Netflix recently. But you know, I had some time this past weekend. You know, I'm in my wallowing over the low results that my show turned out. So I decided to watch this show on or not the show. It's this documentary on Netflix called The Tinder Swindler. And Netflix released it a couple of weeks ago, and not to give too much away, but basically the premise of it is it's about this sort of guy who, you know, is very wealthy or appears very wealthy and asks a bunch of women out on dates or, you know, whatnot. And, you know, they end up being his friends or his, you know, partners and whatnot. And, you know, he eventually takes money from them, and he uses Tinder as kind of his host to sort of look for these vulnerable women that he can take advantage of financially, and, you know, get the money. And so the story focuses on 3 women in particular, and basically talks about their stories, but it also kind of talks about how they sort of banded together to get revenge of their own. So that's basically the plot of the whole thing. It obviously goes way deeper than that. I don't want to give too much away of the scam. It's very intricate, very specific, and you should probably watch it if you want to actually get the full details of it. But let me go into depth as to like what I think of this whole Tinder Swindler thing, because it's pretty crazy and it's going pretty viral right now all over the internet. Here's what scares me. This guy, Simon, that's his name, he's the ultimate scammer, okay? I guess I'm going to have to spoil it for you. He wasn't arrested. Literally nothing has happened to him. He's a free man. He can do it again. And he's probably doing it now. He's probably doing it now. Apparently he has a girlfriend. Is he taking money from her? I have no idea. But honestly, the the thing I was thinking the whole time watching this thing, and particularly finding out that this man is free and this man is a free dude who is out living his life, his very luxurious life, is that this would be such a fun interview. I would love to get him on the Changavi Show. I would love for me and this dude to sit down and like have an interview about his scam and let him tell his side of the story, and we could break it down and we could have a conversation and just talk about it. I feel like it would be a fun thing to talk about. It's it's very interesting. But I think what scares me more than this guy being free and being able to potentially scam these people is the fact that this documentary isn't getting the publicity that I think it should. Yes, this documentary has gotten publicity. It was trending on Netflix for a bit, but it's kind of dipped in popularity as of recently. I've been keeping my eye on it. It was number one for a couple days, but it's dipped. I think there's been some other shows that have come out and whatnot, but it's not getting enough publicity. And this dude has like fucked up women's lives. They're still paying him back in debt, and there's just a lot of crazy stuff that's going on. And I'm sorry to spoil it for those of you that haven't watched it. But it's still, I bet you could tell by the title, the Tinder Swindler, like, no shit, he's going to be a scammer. He's not going to be some fucking hopeless romantic. But listen, here's another angle you could look at this whole Tinder Swindler thing. Don't you think clout let me start over. Don't you think clout could potentially build this dude a big group of fans? Like now his story is public. It's out. But it's kind of like that Ted Bundy effect, right? Obviously, this dude is not a serial killer. But when Ted Bundy would go to court and testify his case, there were so many young girls and young women that, because he was good looking, because he appeared to be wealthy, successful, he was well-spoken, articulated everything he was saying in court very well, that he was a good guy. I feel like something similar could happen with this dude as well. He's a relatively attractive man. He's got a lot of money. He, spends it going on private jets and on boats and all of these things. And I'm not just saying, like, I think will there be a group of women that are all over this man? I'm not saying it's everybody. Don't cancel me for that. But it's the Bundy effect. This happened back in the 80s. And, like, I don't think anything has naturally changed with people to the point where there wouldn't be a group of fans online, some corner of the internet that is fangirling or fanguying. I don't know what your preference is, whatever, over this person. I think there's sort of going to be a Ted Bundy effect here, in terms of the fact that he's gonna gain clout, and his followers have gone consistently up on both Instagram and TikTok. He has 2 accounts up, by the way, and I believe he was verified on Instagram for a hot second before they took his account down. I believe he still has a TikTok in which he posts, and he has fucking way more followers than I do, so good for him. But what about the women, right? Because this dude doesn't matter, right? He's an asshole. He financially scammed these women. So let's talk about the women for a second. My girl, Cecilia. I love Cecilia. If I was only in my late 20s, I don't know. You know what? I had a little Tinder Swindler crush, but that doesn't matter. That's neither here nor there. Listen, this documentary did a really good job of like telling the story of everybody involved, not just him and not just kind of, his doing. It was obviously told from the perspective of the women, but it did a really good job of like going back and forth and really humanizing them, while at the same time like talking about this really intricate story that was going on. And listen, Tinder isn't even the crime here. I don't even think Tinder's at fault. They're just kind of the title. So they're getting free publicity. I downloaded the app right after, by the way. I deleted it like seconds later. I was, or not even seconds, but like minutes. I was like, wow, I am so unoptimistic about this app. So, I deleted it, but that's besides the point. But listen, it was so basically the 3 women, their names were Cecilia, Pernilla, and Eileen. And so there was 3 of them. They each kind of have their own story with this guy, which is sort of discussed within this documentary. Cecilia, kind of her story is basically she met him on Tinder. They fell in love, had a beautiful love affair. And, like it slowly got more sus and sus and sus. And, there were a lot of very evident red flags that were sort of planted within the documentary that make you want to scream at your TV and be like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious? Like, how do you not notice this? Are you dumb? Like, you're stupid. And then with Pernilla, it kind of does the same thing, sort of, talks to you about her relationship with him. They swiped on, they matched on Tinder and then moved on. And then the last girl, Eileen, is sort of the girl that is like, you know what, third time's a charm, bitch. I'm going to, take matters into my own hands. And she sort of finds these two and brings them together. And they have this unlikely, bonding experience in which they sort of try to swindle money from him. Okay. So that's kind of what happens. And I feel like there's been a group of the internet, because I've been doing a lot of research on this documentary, and there's a group of people on the internet that are saying these women are naive, they fell for red flags, they're idiots, they're fucking stupid, they should be arrested for their lack of common sense. And listen, I don't necessarily agree. I think that there is some naivete involved, sure. But also hindsight is 2020. These are the same people that on Monday morning, when their favorite NFL teams, all 22, comes out, they are the ones that point out all the missed reads and are like, he missed it here, the quarterback missed the read here, here, and here. But I'm like, you weren't playing in the game, you don't know what was going on in the moment. In the moment, a lot of things are very different compared to 3 years later when this documentary is coming out and you're sitting on your nice plushy couch, right, calling all the shots. It's very different. You have to respect these women for, what they were doing and what exactly was going on. And you can't necessarily say that you would have made a different decision, because you don't know what decision you would have made if you weren't in that situation, if you weren't in that frame of mind. And these poor girls, I feel really bad for all of them, because they're all still paying back their debts. So they paid this guy and they gave this guy a lot of fucking money, which they kind of go really into depth in the documentary about how much money they really gave these people. They set up a GoFundMe. I'll link it in my thing down below so y'all can contribute. I really hope you do, if you can. Their story's pretty sad. Go watch it first and then contribute if you feel the need. If you don't have the money, then that's fine too. Just know the story, I guess. Look, the narrative, I mean, I don't like the narrative of the scamming. I'm going to go back to that with these girls, right? There's so many people that are saying this, that are saying like, oh, they're naive, they're idiots. But the counter is simple. Like, why are there, like, if they're so naive, if they're so like in over their heads, why are there documentaries coming out about scammers like every other year? You had the Fire Festival. You've had several financial scam documentaries. You've had Theranos, which was a scammed business. You've had, scammers are everywhere. And it shouldn't be like a shameful thing like, oh, I would have seen it differently. I see it differently now that you're presented with all of the information. No, you don't. No, you fucking don't. So, like, here's the thing. They've and by the way, they've raised close to about $100,000, which is dope. So I'm happy. But like you would expect, this is a Netflix documentary. Like, why isn't this have more press? Why isn't this caught fire amongst the world? So I'm here to say, go watch the Tinder Swindler. I think it'd be good. And also, the guy Simon, the scammer, said he's going to release his side of the story on Instagram. He put up this whole post, so I want to be able to see that and hear that. And like I said, he's big chilling, still wealthy, all that. So crazy stuff. But what's the one lesson we can all take away from this Tinder Swindler affair? What can we do? And I think the answer that you have to have is empathy. You have to have empathy for these women. I'm not saying that they were, maybe it was a little bit of naiveness. I'm not even going to lie. Maybe naiveness was involved within this narrative, within this story. And I could definitely see why. But you also, dude, look, like there are people that are going to say like they wouldn't have fallen for it, and that this is, they're smart as hell, and this is some dumb scheme that they could have smelled out from miles away. But be empathetic, be nice to these women. They didn't do anything wrong. Don't hate on them. Okay, hate the guy, don't hate the women. That's my point. And I think the lesson that I took away from this is like, don't just hate for the sake of hating. Like, these poor women are still trying to like put their lives back together after this scam. And it's just Monday morning quarterbacking at the end of the day, like what people are doing. It happened, right? Shit happens. People get scammed all the time. Freddie Mac happened. Enron happened. Theranos happened. Fire Festival happened. Like, the shit goes on. Accept it. Move on. Spread positive vibes. So that's what I'm going to say. The conclusion is to this whole Tinder Swindler scam. Accept it. Process it. Empathize with the women. Fuck the guy. And move on. Just say fuck him. That's it. That's my take from this whole thing. Wrapped up. 30 seconds. But yeah, go watch the Tinder Swindler if you haven't. It's definitely worth the watch. Really sheds light on some interesting things, online date scams and whatnot. And it's just like an interesting, like, it's really well made. So I highly recommend. But also, definitely go check out the GoFundMe after you're done watching it. The women do deserve some support. So if you guys can financially contribute, definitely do so. I feel really bad. And I feel like we can, the least we can do is be empathetic and help them out a little bit because they're still paying out debts. Okay, so let's transition from this crazy Tinder Swindler shit to comedy and have fun, right? Because what the hell is the point of this show if you're not having fun? And listen, there are 3 comedians I really want to talk about because YouTube comedy. I know we talked a little bit about white boy humor a couple weeks ago, right? We talked about Trevor Wallace and we talked about Jimmy Tatro. And if you guys haven't seen that episode, I believe it's episode 22 or 21 that we talked about Jimmy Tatro. He's in the title, so you can go look it up. But yeah, we talked a little bit about YouTube comedy, but we talked about more so a subgenre of YouTube comedy, a different, a more of sketch comedy, more of acting and all of that stuff. So I wanted to talk about kind of the more traditional stand-up side of comedy and how that has changed, right? Because obviously, since Dave Chappelle was coming up, things have changed. The definition of making it in comedy used to be you got a half an hour special on Comedy Central, or you got an hour-long special on HBO, or even on Netflix. But that necessarily isn't the biggest deal in the world anymore. But Anuj, what? Netflix specials are still huge. People release stand-up comedy on Netflix all the time. Okay, so how are comedians developing this popularity, you think? It's through YouTube. YouTube is becoming the new place where comedians are releasing specials, they're releasing work, they're releasing clips, and all of these things. And it's becoming a way for them to develop an audience that they probably never otherwise had. So let me explain what I mean. There are 3 comedians I really want to talk about in this particular sort of YouTube comedian space. There's 3. Their names are Akash Singh, Nimesh Patel, and Andrew Schulz. Andrew Schulz is like the biggest one of them all. He sort of, was the OG YouTube comedian in a lot of ways in terms of like a traditional stand-up comic, like developing his audience through YouTube, all of that. But let's get into Akash Singh for a second. Then we'll get into Schulz, I think, and then we'll do Nimesh. Okay, so Akash Singh, who the hell is this dude? I didn't honestly know who this guy was until about 3 years ago, and I watched a show called Brown Nation on Netflix. It is very whack. I wouldn't recommend it if you're not into like really weird type of humor. If you're Indian, you should go watch it. It's probably one of the more underrated like brown TV shows out there. But the guy Akash Singh was like a sort of supporting actor in it. He was pretty funny, but like he was forgettable, right? It was like very early on in his career. I remember looking him up, and he was like a lowly stand-up comedian at that point. Like, not very many followers, any of that. Then he got on this podcast with his best friend, Andrew Schulz, and they do a show called Flagrant 2, which you guys have probably heard of. It's one of the more popular comedy podcasts in the country. And he really recently released a YouTube special called Bring Back Apu, which has like 1 million followers within a week, or a million views within a week. It's doing really, really well. YouTube comedy is absolutely dope. And now, because basically every stand-up comedian, before you used to have to go to the club and perform live, right? And be like, oh, this is my piece. And then people would have to remember your name and then tell their friends by mouth and all of this stuff. Now you don't have to do that. Now you can record those shows that are happening at the club, put them on YouTube, put them on TikTok. People laugh, ha, 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 engage with it, share it to all their friends, put it in all the WhatsApp groups. And all of a sudden, you have a base. You're building your base through social media, right? And so this is kind of like what Akash did. He released a lot of pieces through YouTube. He kind of got popular through Flagrant 2 as well, and being on that podcast and sort of, backpacking with, and not to, say he's bandwagoning off Andrew Schulz, but like, them two were friends, and Andrew Schulz brought his base of people and Akash brought his perspective of people. And, they kind of have a really good thing going with the pod. So that's good with them. And sort of, I've noticed that this YouTube special thing is really catching heat, in that, like, there are a lot of comedians that are sort of dropping not hour-long specials necessarily, but like 20 to 40 to 50, like 20 to 40 minute specials of just like various work that they're doing with their comedy on YouTube, and just like collections of jokes. And they're doing super, super well. A lot of people are really liking it. It's kind of this new wave of things. Andrew Schulz did it like 4 years ago. I just didn't know about it. Now I've learned about it because of a podcast, which I'll talk about later. But Akash's new special, what's it called? Bring Back a Poo, is fantastic. It's not for the faint of heart. So if you're like ultra woke, this is not going to be the special for you. He's great at like calling out the Indian community on their bullshit. And I respect that, because we need more comedians that are not just going, like, you have the Hussins, right? You have different comedians who are like going to encourage that sort of behavior. And then you have other comedians who are kind of like the counter argument to it, right? Like, okay, hold up. There's a certain attitude, but have you thought about this? And like, why? And it's done in a really funny way. He has a bit about toilets, which I think is hilarious. And it's coming at it from like sort of an immigrant perspective, which I haven't seen in the scape of comedy recently. So I think that's really cool. Watch Bring Back a Poo. I'll link that too. How about that? I'll link that down below as well. Really good social commentary on just a variety of issues going on within the world. Like I said, edgier type of humor for sure. All three of these guys are definitely like an edgier sort of humor, little not politically correct, which is cool with me, but with some people it's not. And, I think you need to reevaluate if it's not cool with you, because humor is supposed to be edgy and make you feel uncomfortable. Not for the faint of heart. But listen, Akash definitely has a big following. Like, he's verified on Instagram. Like, people know who he is. Flagrant 2, like that's a big podcast. Like, he's done shit with Andrew Schulz. Like, people know who Akash Singh is. But he's gonna go. He's my bet. I'm putting my bet down. If I had to put money on the table and be like, who's the next brown comedian that's gonna blow up, it's either him or the other guy I'm going to talk about here, Nimesh Patel. Went and saw Nimesh live, fantastic. But Akash Singh I have my money on him. He's going to do big fucking things in this industry. He's funny as hell. He has a really unique type of humor, and he's good at what he does. And I think I'm confident in him. I think he's both him and Nimesh are definitely like my two that are like, okay, we gotta watch. Like, they're close. So watch out, because these guys are going mainstream real soon. Netflix specials could be upcoming, and pretty soon the next time you see them could be in a theater. So you never know. You never know, guys. You never know. That's all I'm saying. But if I had to put a bet, it would be on them too. All right. But listen, Andrew Schulz, right? This next guy I wanted to talk about. He's way established. He's mad established. Like, this dude has, almost 2 mil on the Instagram. Like, he's probably, him and Hassan Minaj are arguably at the same level. He's very, very big, and he's doing theaters and whatnot. And he's one of the bigger comedians right now in the US, like one of the hotter comedian names. So I'm not even trying to act like I just discovered this fucking underground comedian. No. But I want to talk about him because he was sort of the OG of this whole YouTube comedian movement, in that, like, he was one of the first people, and I learned this by listening to the Colin and Samir podcast. Shout out to Colin and Samir. Y'all are awesome, and y'all are like really doing amazing things. I also found Colin and Samir at 10,000 subscribers. So I did find them. They were a gold mine. You can ask my friends. But Andrew Schulz was sort of this OG of YouTube comedy. And he continues to try new things. That's what I like about him. He's sort of advancing that industry of stand-up from like just shows, just selling tickets at the comedy club, to putting shit up online and doing all of these things. And he was sort of that first guy to get the ball rolling, so guys like Akash and Nimesh could, continue and build their success off of this sort of model. And he's continuously changing the space, like the way he was discussing it with Colin and Samir. Great interview again. You should watch it. Andrew Schulz and Colin Samir, they talked a lot about his career and the different things that he could do with specials and whatnot, and the different things that he has done by posting crowd work and all of these things, and sort of how he adapted to the pandemic and through various rants, and his also like different online content that he was experimenting with that was doing really well. And that online content, that pandemic stuff, landed him a Netflix special earlier or later last year. So listen, and he's also the head of Flagrant 2, which was with Akash that I referenced earlier. And he's absolutely hilarious. I have yet to watch Scholl Saves America, which is his Netflix special. I definitely have to go check that out. Again, not for like super, super woke people that are going to get sensitive. Super funny dude. Search him up on YouTube. He's got a lot of stand-up bits out there. The catalog is endless. He's got like 1.7 million subscribers. He's a big hit and highly recommend. So definitely go check out Andrew Scholl's, and he's the OG. Netflix and HBO specials seemingly are not the ways to go anymore. And Scholl sort of talked about it on this show. Like, you can build through Instagram and through YouTube and use sort of at the end, like the Netflix and HBO specials seem to be like the sort of like, oh, cherry on top social capital, ding, ding, ding. Like you have the asterisks, you sort of have the blue check of comedy, so to speak, right? And that's kind of where it's headed. And then I want to talk about Nimesh Patel. He's the last comedian that we're going to talk about here and then move on. I went and saw Nimesh live in San Francisco, and he was a ton of fun. I highly recommend, if he's in your city, go follow him. I think his Instagram is Finding Nimesh. Super good at just like, and this, I got to see him live, so I think I have a different experience. He's very good at picking up on the crowd's vibes and like super, makes it like a very intimate performance in that, like, he's talking to crowd members. So it feels like, you're just chatting with him at a dinner party or something like that. So it's not necessarily like, a theater sort of stand-up production, which was more so what I saw with Hassan. And I saw those, and those are like theater shows. Those are like arena shows. It feels less intimate. It feels more of like I'm watching a movie type thing. Given I haven't been to very many comedy shows, so I don't know like what other stand-up comedians do and how that feels. But the ones that I have been to, it's, Hassan or sort of this more intimate comedy club vibe, which, by the way, I love the comedy club. I really want to go back at some point. Nimesh was awesome, though. The show was a lot of fun, but he basically blew up because I guess during the pandemic, he found this sort of app he found the app, which I use, called TikTok, and sort of started posting clips. You've probably seen him on TikTok. If you're Indian, his Finding Nimesh is his handle. And he posts a lot of funny stand-up stuff that he's been doing throughout sort of this last year. And it's, a couple of those bits have caught heat and sort of, has allowed him to create his own tour, which is amazing. And Nimesh has done a special on YouTube, actually. It was about healthcare and doctors and all of that. And it's absolutely necessary. Like, you have to go check that out. A lot of comedians are going down this path of like YouTube specials and all of this stuff. And it's really, really fun to watch all of these guys like do amazing things and stand up. And I'm rooting for all of them. Scholl's, Akash, Nimesh, like these guys are awesome. They're super dope. And I really like seeing these independent specials released on YouTube, released on people's own, rather than through big companies like HBO and Netflix, who can theoretically like censor what you're saying. So this is really cool to see these guys just kind of go through and sort of say whatever it is they want to say, like by themselves. Like, I think that's sick. I think that's lit. And so, and kind of put it on their own platform, and it's under their own name, and they make all the royalties and all that stuff. So that's awesome. And that can lead you to getting towards, this is why I love social media and YouTube. And I think it's definitely, I'm very pro this type of stuff for sure. Yeah. But yeah, YouTube comedy, man. I think this is absolutely the future. And obviously you're seeing a lot more of this stand-up TikToks, comedy TikTok moving to these social platforms, building through here. I mean, we talked about other guys too, like Trevor Wallace and Tatro, who built themselves through sort of skits. But I'd say Jimmy Tatro is more of the traditional route of like, doing a little bit of skits and then transitioning that into an acting career. But actual traditional stand-up moving to YouTube and TikTok and all these social media platforms is totally happening, and we have to acknowledge that, which is amazing. And I think all of these kind of creative crafts are going to move in the social media direction, which is very cool. And I'm just super excited to kind of see where it all ends up at the end of the day. I'm very, very excited, and I cannot wait to see where this all goes. But I got one more news topic. I got a news topic, which is very serious, and that's how we're going to wrap the show today. It's kind of like a two-parter, so we'll see how much of it we can get through. But how do I do this? Like, transitioning from like comedy and having fun and talking about comedians, But let's go to this. I mean, it's interesting, bro. Hijab row. What the hell is this, Anuj? Listen, this is a really tough thing to talk about. Not necessarily for me, it's a tough thing to talk about, but it's a tough thing to talk about because it's really sad about what's going on here in India. And I know I'm Indian American. Like, the grand rule is like, don't touch Indian politics because you're going to get some auntie pissed off. But like, honestly, I don't care. So I really want to talk about this because it's a story that's like hit close for me. And I've done a lot of thinking on it. And I've done a lot of reading on it. And I really want to share with you guys what's been going on here. So what is hijab row? Okay, let me explain the situation that's going on right now in India, particularly in southern India. So this is something that's taking place in Karnataka, which is coincidentally the state that my parents are from. They're from a city called Bangalore, which is in Karnataka. It's the capital of the state. And it's a state in southern India. And so basically what's happening is that the state has a lot of government-run high schools and colleges, and basically they have stated and gone on the record and said that they cannot wear, that Muslim girl students cannot wear the hijab, that is banned in these schools. And a lot of these practices are stemming from this very right-winged party that controls a majority of India, known as the BJP, or the Bharat Natya, I cannot pronounce it. I apologize. But it's known as the BJP. There's a full name for it, something party. And it's known as a very right-wing Hindu traditionalist party, Hindu nationalist. Some people have gone on the record and said it definitely has sort of these Hindu undertones to it, for sure. But there are a lot of Muslim activists in India that are saying that it's impinging on their right to practice whatever religion they please, which is true. It is inhibiting religious freedom. And considering India has a secular, is known publicly as a secular constitution, Narendra Modi and other prime ministers have publicly admitted that it is a secular country. This is obviously a red flag that's going on, right? Okay, let me go deeper into detail here. The BJP sort of rules over Karnataka, right? It's the majority party in India, but it absolutely rules over Karnataka, because I believe 86% of the population in this state in southern India is Hindu. And then there's like 13% of people that are Muslim. So Muslims are a pretty slim minority here in this state. And throughout the state, like I've mentioned, in the last week, a lot of Muslim girls have been prevented from entering schools. And it's been a critical exam week, which is kind of what makes this a big national storyline. So a lot of these exams are taking place. And in India, for those of you that know, that have Indian parents and Indian parents who are listening to this, like, you guys know how important exams are to the school culture. Like, they mean your whole grade, all of these things. And it's a critical, I believe it's some governmental exam week. I don't know exactly what that exam is. But this is kind of how it all started. There was a huge test for these government high schools in India. And a lot of the ladies that were walking into these government high schools and colleges were told, like, listen, you can either remove the hijab or you can't take the test. And to credit to these ladies, they said, fuck you, I'm not removing my hijab. And they walked out. They said, hell no. And they didn't take the test. And they sacrificed their futures, basically, for, to keep their religious freedom and to defend the rights of their own religious freedom. And sort of what happened was these videos start circulating around India, WhatsApp and Facebook, of these girls basically protesting outside the school. And what happened was that Hindu students got pissed. And, in Karnataka in particular, it's known for having a lot of Hindu students a lot of Hindus follow this philosophy called Hindutva. I'm not saying everybody, but there is a significant hotbed in Karnataka because of the huge Hindu majority population that I was talking about that subscribe to this philosophy called Hindutva, which is a philosophy that a lot of Hindu fundamentalists go with. And it's sort of, saying Hinduism overall, and like Hinduism is the superior religion, sort of encouraging all of these sort of ideas. And I mean, unfortunately, and these Hindu students have began counter protests around the state of them wearing saffron, which is the color of the BJP party, also one of the colors that represents Hinduism, and basically chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, or Hare Ram, or something like that. different religious chants. I know Hare Krishna, Hare Ram was one of them. And the Muslim students are chanting back Allahu Akbar. And so it's basically been this huge fight between Hindu and Muslim. And the whole scandal has gotten so bad. It's happened in multiple high schools throughout Karnataka. It's gotten so bad that there was a 3-day shutdown of all high schools and colleges that are public in Karnataka. Pretty crazy stuff. And also, there's been an uptick of violence and bullying for these girls wearing hijabs. A lot of Hindu guys tend to be Hindu men, like shoving them, beating them up, all of these things. So it's been a lot of roughhousing and stuff going on, and it's been pretty bad. So, like, in terms of what's going on, like, who is the face of this whole thing? It's this woman by the name of Muskan Khan. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it right. But her name is Muskan Khan. She's 19 years old. And she was the first video to really go viral around India. And there was a video of Hindu men sort of charging at her, yelling Jai Shri Ram, like I was saying, one of the religious chants, and she being taken away by the college authorities and authorities themselves, basically, yelling back and basically being dragged out of the school for, wearing her hijab and all of these things. And it's just really sad, dude. Like, as an Indian American, as someone who thinks that here in America, at least, we've come decently far when it comes to the Hindu Muslim generation, like our generation of Hindu versus Muslim. I feel like we've come relatively far comparatively to where we were way back in where our parents' generation was in terms of this Hindu Muslim divide. Clearly, that generation in India has not, because there's this guy by the name of Narendra Modi. Okay, and I have to take it to Modi. Listen, Narendra Modi, and I'm going to kind of go on a little bit of a Narendra Modi rant here. Narendra Modi is the head of the BJP, which is the big, right-winged sort of Hindu, quote-unquote Hindu party. I believe it is a Hindu party, a Hindu nationalist party, but other people, take that term, feel offended by that term, and I disagree with them, but that's neither here nor there right now. Narendra Modi is probably, the way I describe Narendra Modi is he's Donald Trump on steroids and 5 shots of espresso coupled with a couple lines of cocaine. He is the worst, way worse version than Donald Trump. Okay. And the saddest part is it's not we know as Americans, not the majority of people don't support Donald Trump. Right? They're very much oh, he's weird and he's a terrible person, he's creepy and all this stuff. There's just this really loud minority of people who are Trump 2024, he won the election in 2020, recount the votes, right? It's just this cracked out, very spread out different minorities throughout the country. There are a lot of Trump supporters. Obviously, not all Trump supporters are cracked out. It's more nuanced than that. There's some, very reasonable Trump supporters who are willing to have a debate and converse with you. And I know a few of them, and they're not all like that. But there are a lot of Donald Trump supporters that are very vocal and kind of like that. The thing is, in India, in America, they're the minority. In India, they're the majority. There's a lot of people like that who are cracked out and who are big BJP supporters because, number one, Narendra Modi's Hindu, and India's 80% Hindu. Number two, Narendra Modi has put into place economic measures to help the poor, and he's got a really good story because he's kind of come up from this very lowly life of he grew up very poor, and now he's kind of the working man's representative, so to speak. That's how they view him in India. And the BJP is sort of, like I said, it's a 80 million times worse version of the Republican Party. And it's really, really bad. And I kind of see this hypocrisy here in America with a lot of aunties and uncles, because there are a lot of aunties and uncles that are very pro BJP, but they're very anti Donald Trump. And I have a theory for this. I think it's cool to hate on Donald Trump here in America. In a lot of circles, it's very cool to hate on Trump. Hollywood hates on Trump. Pop culture hates on Trump. Rappers hate on Trump. Musicians hate on Trump. Artists hate on Trump. Everybody hates on Trump, right? It's kind of the cool thing. In India, it's cool to love Modi. You love Modi. Oh, Bollywood loves Modi. Oh, Modi's posing for pictures with Hrithik Roshan. Oh, Modi, yes. Modi is God. Like people are praying to him like he's a Hindu idol. Like what the fuck? Like, do you understand like the hypocrisy here? It's like with people here in this country, like people like my aunties and my uncles and my parents are not Modi supporters, but like other people who are around my parents' age, they like Narendra Modi because all of their relatives are telling them in India that like Modi's amazing, like Howdy Modi, all of these things, right? And then you have and then in America, like they hate Trump. They're like, these are the same people that are like, this goddamn Trump, man. And you're like, dude, you love Narendra Modi, bro. What the fuck, Raju uncle? Like, dude, like it's the same shit. It's completely hypocritical. And it's really, really funny. Um, and it's sad. It's sad because there's been several actions done by the BJP, that the introduction of the Ram temple, there was a whole controversy with that I haven't done enough research into. Now this stuff with Hijab row, Narendra Modi has not commented on this whole countrywide protest, by the way. Zero comments from Narendra Modi about this whole situation. He's kept his mouth shut, which I mean should tell you more than enough that there are being Muslim girls who are being denied an education because of the fact that they can't wear their hijabs, which is written in the Constitution of India, like you have your right to religious freedom. So, and Narendra Modi has been known to invoke on Muslim rights. There's been there's been a heavy increase of Hindu-Muslim attacks. This is just Hindu-Muslim chapter infinity. This shit is happening, and it's being encouraged by people of the BJP like Narendra Modi, right? And the sad part is there's going to be an election in 2024. Guess what? Narendra Modi's probably going to win. Why? Because there's no competent candidate to run against him. There's this other guy by the name of Rahul Gandhi who owns the Congress Party, right? Rahul Gandhi, he doesn't own the Congress Party, but he's kind of like one of the big guys in the Congress Party. The Congress Party, if you look at it like as if a white person were to look at the Congress Party and just read their definition online, they would be like, oh, that's like the Democrats. Why don't more young people vote for the Congress Party? Well, I'll tell you why. The Congress Party is super corrupt. It's filled with its own levels of controversy, and it's dominated by the political family. So Rahul Gandhi is the man. What is it? Is he okay? Oh man, fuck! I forget all of this, but he's related to the same political family as Jawaharlal Nehru, whose daughter was Indira Gandhi, whose son was Rajiv Gandhi, and his father and Rahul Gandhi's father is Rajiv Gandhi. Yeah, my bad. Okay, I got through it. But it's a political family. It's been dominated by a political family for years. It's like the Kennedys of India, and it's corrupt, and it's filled with all sorts of these things, and no one wants to vote for them. And Rahul Gandhi also is a completely inept politician. He said some very crazy things on the record, and like you talk to aunties, because I think aunties are the best people to talk to when it comes to politics, uncles, all of that, because they'll tell you like what the people are really thinking. And they look at you and they're like, Rahul Gandhi's a complete idiot. Why would anyone want to vote for him? And you look at 3 video clips of him and you're like, oh, goddamn. Like, I guess this guy really is stupid. And he's supposed to be representing this sort of new hope progressive chapter for India. So you have that running against Modi. You have a couple other people. You have this guy, Yogi Adityanath, who's a Hindu monk. And he's even pretty much arguably more than a nationalist than Modi. And you have a couple other candidates who are like getting 3% of the vote and who most likely aren't going to win. That's the vibe right now. That is the vibe. It's sad. It's pathetic and it's sad. And that's the vibe that India is in. And a lot of young people are voting for Narendra Modi. Why? Because it's a Hindu majority country. And a lot of Hindu young millennials are like, oh, Narendra Modi has done so good for this. He's protecting our values. So here you go. Here you go, because India's GDP has gone up during Modi's presidency, right? And America's economy rose with Donald Trump. There's so many parallels between these two. And I didn't mean to turn this into like this whole rant, right? I don't want to take away from Hijab row, because Hijab row, let's bring it back. There's no real analysis that I can provide you about this issue other than the fact that it's fucked up. And other than the fact that I'm probably going to get taken down on TikTok and Instagram, because there are a lot of Indian people on these apps that are looking for people who are anti-Modi, and they report you. It's, that's the truth. And I'll probably get some DMs from aunties and relatives in India telling me to take it down, telling me that Narendra Modi is some, saint and all of this stuff. He's not. Narendra Modi's not. Let's not get it twisted here. Narendra Modi's a terrible person. He's a bad politician. And he is kind of the same way of Donald Trump. There's no analysis that I could provide you other than the fact that this is a political mess. You think the United States is a mess? Go to India and look at their politics. I do 10 minutes of research and you will come out of that confused. Go watch the news in India. I forget her name, Savita something, but they literally yell. They yell at each other. It's like, do you think Don Lemon is a lot of interrupting, with like the 8 people panels? India's the same way, bro. It's the same freaking way. And why is this all important? Why is Hijab Row important? Why is Narendra Modi important? Because India is amongst one of the world's most powerful economies. It's going to be the biggest country in the world by 2030, I think, or if it's not the biggest already. They're becoming a world power, and you have another dysfunctional leader, right? Russia's got Putin, North Korea's got Kim Jong-un, fucking every country, all the powerful countries have dysfunctional leaders. And you have add another one to the picture, Narendra Modi, and he's not going anywhere because, like I said, there's no one to run against this dude. And India's political approach of Hindu nationalism is going to be very interesting to see how it expands to its relationships throughout the world. And I really do actually want to get some auntie and uncle perspectives of people who support, Narendra Modi and all of these things, because I would be very interested. I talked to my parents a little bit about this, and they had absolutely no clue that Hijab Row was even happening in their own home state of Karnataka, which is sad in itself because clearly international news doesn't make the rounds to America, because this is a huge deal. It's an absolutely massive deal. And in terms of Hijab Row, like, there's nothing that we can necessarily do right now. There's nothing I can necessarily talk about, because you have to wait for this decision from the Karnataka High Court to come out, because we really don't know how this whole thing's going to play out. Now there's a lot of protesting. There's very, very little coverage happening in the American and in the regular media. So I hope y'all talk about this and make this an important issue, because it really is. This issue is fucking important. Whether you like it or not, people's religious freedoms are being inhibited in another country. I don't know what to tell you if this isn't important. Y'all claim that, we claim in America that we are the most well-educated nation and we know everything that's going on. We don't know what the fuck is happening in a country, in one of the biggest countries in the world, that there's literally girls that are protesting in the streets and getting beat up by Hindu nationalist men who are being encouraged by the leader of this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what to tell you. I think the best thing that we can do is educate ourselves, which is what I'm trying to do here. This is what we're trying to do with Hijab Bro. This is what we're trying to do with the Changavi Show. Yes, we can have fun sometimes, right? We can have a good time and talk about all of these things, but I want to break this down for you as like a layman's terms. I don't want to make this hard. I want to kind of break it down in a rant and in an argument fashion, because I think this is the best way people learn. I think breaking it down with simple language and simple things is how people learn. But that's all I have for Hijab Bro right now. And I will definitely keep updating you guys as to stuff is happening. But that's all I have for the show, too. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys are here still at this point, credit to you. Shout out. This was a really fun episode to film. Very sad because, this Hijab Row stuff does mean something, because it really is happening in sort of my parents' home state. And it's very concerning for the future of the country. But listen, I like to be, positively balanced. I like to be a balanced optimist. So hopefully, we can end on a positive note and say that, like, it's great that there are Muslim women who are out there fighting this fight right now, so that maybe in 30 years we have a secular country in India, hopefully, right? Or a more secular country than it is now. But thank you guys so much for listening to the show. I really appreciate every single one of you. If you guys like this episode, feel free to hit the like button. Feel free to share this with all your friends, your family, whoever you think may actually benefit and get some value from this. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. We're at 58 subscribers, which is the highest it's ever been. Thank you. Really appreciate all of you. If you're on Spotify, go ahead and hit that follow button so you know when exactly the episodes are going to come. And same if you're on YouTube, hit the bell, because then you'll know exactly when clips, highlights, YouTube videos, whatever I post is coming up. So every single one of you, appreciate all of you guys so much. This is Anuj Changavi signing off from his parents' house here in the Bay Area, California, baby. Signing off. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and peace. This was a fun episode to do. Episode 24 of the Changavi Show in the books.